One of the ways my small nursery makes an income is by selling at markets. I go every other weekend and, amongst other things, sell succulent arrangements. Now, I've been doing this for quite some time and often get one question, and that is how to keep your succulents contained. Often it is not really a question but more of a complaint. And I can kind of understand that you buy something that looks a certain way and then in a few months' time the whole thing changes shape, succulents will grow up, succulents will grow over, and they can start pushing against each other, so the whole thing will look quite messy. Now, a lot of the time it really depends how the arrangements are planted. I try and put succulents in that won't clash together and they will grow a certain way without impacting the other, but most of the time they will change as they grow, and they will grow if you give them good enough conditions. In today's video, I'm going to show you a few ways of containing your succulents. They may not be perfect. Most succulents will definitely grow. There are varieties that stay small, but I would say that the great majority will overgrow their pot at some stage. And if you don't like them to go feral, there are a few things that you can do. Now, a lot of this will very much depend on the type of succulent you have in your arrangement. So some of the things I say will not be an option if you have the wrong type of plant, but I do think that I have a solution for pretty much any shape or type of succulent that is out there. So the first thing that you can do is trim branches. A lot of succulents will not have branches, they will grow as rosettes, and we will get to that a bit later on. But if you have plants like these or that one here, the Portulacaria, that branch out and they will grow up quite a bit taller in this arrangement and also wider, you can manage the growth. Also with plants like these, so look how massive this thing is in this pot. I have kept this pot intentionally because I just love how it's growing. Look at how big it is. And I am not really going to trim it back. I am just going to show you what you can do without actually breaking things off. So you see how you've got different branches here. If, say, you want this to be a little less overpowering, you can trim pretty much any rosettes off. So you can trim branches here, here, but I would not recommend cutting leaves off. You will not achieve anything by this. The leaves are very likely to die off and they will just look brown and ugly. So if you are trimming branches, just take the whole thing out. It will achieve the best result, and you can take off the ones that you don't really like for instance, this branch here just does not look amazing, so I'm going to take it out. It looks a bit bare, and immediately the whole thing looks slightly better. Maybe this one as well. And the great thing about succulents is that you can put these elsewhere, so you can put them either in your garden or into another pot. So trimming branches is a good option for plants that branch out. Now the second option is to remove offsets on clumping succulents. So these are mostly your echeverias. So for instance here, now this one doesn't have a lot of offsets, but let's say that this is this. So this type of echeveria can spread out quite a bit and it can push out other smaller plants. So what you can do is take individual rosettes off, and you will do that just by pulling them out. I'm not going to do it here because I am selling this plant and I don't want to break it apart, but you can just pull them out. You will create a little bit of a hole, but the main rosette will just cover it up eventually. Again, I would not recommend just trimming the leaves halfway through. It's not going to make any... It's just going to make the whole thing look a bit shabby because the leaves will die off and go brown. The third thing you can do is to remove fast-growing plants. So coming back to this arrangement here again, this is obviously the fastest growing plant in the whole arrangement. And if you want these guys to kind of take over this space, you can remove this plant completely. So just get all of the rosettes out, take it by the biggest branch here where all the other branches are coming from, and just pull it out. And you can either replace it with another slower growing plant, or you can just let the other succulents do their thing and grow over the space. and cover this up. Okay, the next thing that you can do is behead, and I'm going to use this Graptoveria purple, the light, as an example. So this is kind of growing out a little bit. I quite like it, but when I first planted it, it was just this one rosette. These guys weren't here, and it was a lot shorter than what it is now. So if you want to keep the height as it was originally, you can just take this whole rosette off and kind of behead it, and what you will get is new growth like this. So you will get multiple rosettes at the cut point. They may eventually grow out again, but then you can just behead once more when they get to that stage. And the last thing that you can do is just take apart the whole thing and start again. Now, this may not be the greatest choice, especially if you don't like repotting and replanting and you don't really want to muck around with soil and new potting mix. So I do understand that this is not the best option, but it is something that you can do, and I think a few people out there might enjoy the challenge of just redoing their arrangement again. So basically it will go something like removing the biggest ones first and trying to pull all the other ones by their roots, and then you would just set them aside, remove all of the potting mix from the pot, clean it out nicely, and then get some succulent potting mix and just plant the plants that you like in it. Again, you can choose different plants as well. You can trim back the ones that you already have, or you can just plant a couple in there. With the new potting mix, the plants will start growing again, and they will change the whole arrangement, and they will change completely in a few months' time. So this is definitely an option. Now, there are a few points that I would like to make about arrangements as well. This is quite obvious, but I think it needs to be said. If they are in big pots, they are likely to grow a lot more than, say, arrangements in smaller pots like this. So if you get a pot where there's quite a bit of root space, I think it's fair to expect that your plants will grow. Now, when I sell these arrangements, I usually keep them for a couple of months at the minimum, just to make sure that all the plants settle in well. And also, I showed this in another video, but I can pretty much turn all of my arrangements upside down. There's stones in here, so I don't want to do a lot of it. But you can turn them, and they are so well grown in that they won't go anywhere. And I do this for a couple of reasons. One, I don't want the plants dying in someone's care after I have sold them. And two, they are easy to transport. Taking off from the lights or just going around the bend can kind of shift the pot in the back of my ute quite a bit. And if they are well grown in, nothing is going to happen to them. And another thing this does is make the plants colonize the pot with their roots. So they will grow in my care, but then when I sell this, it won't grow that much anymore. So once the plants in this pot kind of take over the whole pot with their roots and colonize the whole root space, they will cease growing, or they will just grow very slowly. So the longer you have your arrangement, the slower it will be. So you might see initial burst of growth, but eventually the whole thing will settle and they won't really grow that much. And this is a lot faster in smaller pots like these. So here I have some little babies growing out, and they will probably grow to just nice little rosettes, but I don't think they will grow into a full size rosette and I just completely take over the pot. This here will grow a little bit taller and a little bit wider, and I'm hoping that this Ripsalis will grow over the pot and hang down just slightly, but that is all that it's going to do in a small pot like this. So here, for instance, this is about 4 months old, and the Ripsalis has grown out a little bit. There is some new growth, but I don't think I'm going to see a lot more growth on this one here. So it is a good thing to remember that at some stage you will not be seeing as much growth as you initially were seeing when you first got it. So another thing is that when you start chopping things away, they will not grow back very fast and you might not see as much growth. So if you're hoping to, for instance, coming back to this plant, if you're hoping to get more rosettes by beheading it here, you may not get that because the plant has already kind of used up all of the nutrients in the pot and it doesn't have enough energy to create all of these new growths. So if you've had the pot for a year or so and you're expecting quite a bit of growth from a plant, this may not happen because there's no nutrients supporting that growth. And lastly, I would like to mention the seasons. So I would recommend to do any trimming in the growing season, because if you do it in winter, you may shock the plant in some way. I mean, this is just being overly cautious, but I think it is just better to do any type of cutting and repotting or propagating in the growing season of the plant. And I think that is all I have to say about this. So I hope this was useful. Do let me know what you think in the comments and I will see you all next time. Thank you very much for watching.